From its beaches to its beautiful backwaters, the state of Kerala's retail, real estate, IT and infrastructure sectors have flourished. And I'm here at the Leaders of Tomorrow Springboard in the city of Trivandrum to understand what makes Trivandrum tick.
Thiruvananthapuram, fondly known as the evergreen city of India, is fast gaining traction for honing skills and nurturing top-notch talent. A dynamic hub showcasing possibilities, innovation and is skilling tomorrow's leaders. From the high-flying aerospace industry and the buzzing IT sector to the allure of tourism and the time-honored tradition of tea production, Thiruvananthapuram has it all.
Trivandrum contributes roughly over 10% of the state of Kerala's GDP. And it's growing at a rate that is estimated at upwards of 15% per annum. I'd love your take on whether this growth rate is sustainable or if you seem to believe that it's hit a saturation spree, sir.
What is Kerala's strength? Kerala's strength is, one is our culture and heritage. It's God's own country. People are coming here because of our hospitality.
Absolutely.
So that is reflected in Trivandrum also. That is one. Second, Kerala's strength is our innovation. We have India's first digital university here, first Technopark was here, and we have a knowledge economy mission. So innovation is Kerala's real strength. So that also is reflected in Trivandrum. Third, the growth rate will be more because more developments are coming to Trivandrum. You can see a lot of, it's not in one single sector, it is in multiple sectors. If I take aerospace, Chandrayaan was launched a couple of days ago.
Absolutely.
And there are so many enterprises from Trivandrum contributing to it. So there is a great ecosystem for aerospace. If you look at tourism, there is a great ecosystem with Kovalam and Varkala Beach. If you look at logistics, there is an excellent ecosystem coming up with Vizhinjam Port coming. So that way, if you look at, say, skilling and education, when I joined IAS, Trivandrum was not a hub for training. But now Trivandrum is emerging as a hub for skill training, especially for competitive exams. So education to logistics to aerospace to anything.
Right.
Look at life sciences. There is Life Science Park in Thonnakal which is coming up. And there is a great ecosystem for medical device and allied companies here coming up. So that way of course, real estate and other things I'm not mentioning now. So that way, I think there is huge scope for Trivandrum as a real hub for development, and growth rate will be more with more sustainability.
Well, sir, that gives us a lot to look forward to. And if I could bring you on now, Mr. Vijayaraghavan, because the IT industry is, of course, what's always capturing headlines. And I believe that this city alone is responsible for over 55% of software exports up and across the state of Kerala. Now, my question to you is, do you ever harbor the fear that as a result, the city may be branded as a part of that back office culture that India is so known well for, as opposed to that front office forward-thinking strategic lens?
One of the things about the companies in Trivandrum and mainly in Kerala also to a great extent is that we've never been a back office. We've had very few companies which were into the old data entry, maybe one or two. We had one or two who were in medical transcription after that. If you really look at it, there are several product companies out of Trivandrum, which means they actually are not in the numbers game. They probably have maybe a few hundred employees or have a few thousand employees, but they're actually into intellectual property. So their revenue is from licensing, which is a big difference from what you talked about. The typical example of what would is that when you had the financial crisis several years ago, there was very little retrenchment here.
Right.
And that is a big difference between what you see here and what you would see in other parts of the country. Another interesting thing is that we did talk about startups earlier. The startup policy, the first startup policy in the country was out of Kerala.
Right.
Okay? And at one point of time, we probably had one of the largest groups of startups. And the difference on the startups in Kerala, and which you see with organizations like TIE in Kerala, is that unlike in many parts of the country, it is not just IT. So you have startups working in other sectors also. So that way, I would say we are a bit different. from what's happening in the rest of the place. Of course, opportunities could be much more.
Coming to you now, Mr. Prasad, I think what's also terribly interesting about the state of Kerala is it seems to be in the midst of a demographic transition, right? So if you look at population that's over the age of 60, in the last 60 years, the senior citizen population has gone from 5% of the state to over 15% of the state. So there's a rich demographic dividend at work here. 1 in every 7 Kerala citizens is a senior citizen. So how is the state capitalizing on their knowledge, experience, and wisdom?
I think Kerala has a very unique demographic as far as a lot of, if we compare with the rest of India, it's even over, let's say, a decade or 2 decades ago, its demographic growth has been slowing. I mean,
Right.
It's a combination of, higher education, workforce participation by women, and so on and so forth. Also, the fact that it has very high HDI, Human Development Index, which is very comparable to some of OECD countries, right? So life expectancy is very high and so on and so forth. That gives us sort of have the wealth of seniors that you spoke about. Kerala has also experienced a lot of in-migration and out-migration, so it's a very exotic demographic mix. I think what's helped is in many fields where knowledge and experience aggregate. And Kerala has actually got one of the best, health ecosystems. In fact, it sees a lot of folks flying from outside the country for treatments here. I think that's one. I think in general, the state's ecosystem's very driven by the knowledge economy, and that has been the case for a long time. And that's where, again, institutional memory, institutional sort of continuity, having intellectual capital that's generated within the state. I think one of the reasons that Trivandrum's attracted a lot of startups is because of the quality of educational institutions here in all kinds of fields, but also because of the sheer wealth of R&D here.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to build on some of your observations coming to you now, Mr. Harikishore, because given the slew of medical colleges that are world-class in this city, Trivandrum obviously has become a medical tourism mecca. But we can't ignore the fact that there are also over 50 Ayurvedic centers that are sprinkled across the city. So to what extent have they modernized, have they upskilled, have they reskilled? Or does the entire value lie in those ancient traditional practices?
Yeah, as mentioned by other speakers, there is a lot of potential for medical Ayurveda related tourism and also investments in Trivandrum. Ayurveda is, we had competition with Sri Lanka earlier, but now, Kerala's position is unique, especially in Ayurveda. Medical tourism as such, focusing on Ayurveda has got huge potential. One, because of our brand name. Kerala is known throughout the world as one of the must-in destination, and we have a brand and people believe in our core strengths. So that's why we have huge opportunity in Ayurveda, especially in and around Trivandrum. Second is we need to tap more potential in this sector. Medical tourism, even though it is there, it is, more people have to come and it's very cheap here.
What's that going to require, sir, to maximize that potential? What's the need of the hour?
We need to prioritize this health as a focus sector for bringing investments. People are coming, if you go to one of the hospitals here, you can see foreign nationals. A lot of people are there. But we need to focus on bringing more people by prioritizing and by fixing long-term and short-term goals.
So, Mr. Prasad, I need your take on, first of all, whether you believe small is beautiful and that branding is something that resonates for you when it comes to this city and this state. And secondly, your take on the government's shift, if necessary, from being a regulator to playing the role of a facilitator.
I think the government needs to get into a more active enabler mode where it invests into physical infrastructure. And India is now, one of the largest developers of infrastructure in the world. Gone are the days that we only spoke about China. I was talking to someone and they were making an interesting point that there are more tunnel boring machines. These are giant mechanical earthworms that build metro tunnels and so on and so forth. There are more tunnel boring machines that work in India now than anywhere else in the world. India is adding more subway lines at a faster pace than China. Forget the US. I mean, that's where I live. It takes 10 years to build a 3 kilometer metro line. India is adding ungodly numbers every year. But that kind of infrastructure development also has to come to Trivandrum. And I'll give you an example why. There are tenants that we deal with, and these are multinational companies that have offices around India and around the world. When they come to look at space in Trivandrum, their first question is, where's the nearest mass transit station? Because in a world where policies are driven by ESG, environment, social, and governance principles, having mass transit access, which is net zero, whatever you want to call it, is now an important consideration for employers to decide locations.
Right.
So when an office in Trivandrum is competing against Delhi, which has so many metro lines that they've run out of colors to name them, where they have magenta, purple, violet.
Right.
My daughter keeps asking why are there so many shades. That's because there are so many lines. Against a Trivandrum, where there are no metros yet, or where Cochin, where there's one forlorn single line wandering around the city, the question of physical infrastructure will come to mind. And that, in a sense, adds to the value proposition of the city. So the government needs to get back to investing in infrastructure, which, as the sort of sovereign entity, it is much better at doing than anybody else. So that, I think, is where we need emphasis to ensure that infrastructure here is up to spec compared to any other city that a potential employer or investor could be considering.
It's time for a short break, but our coverage of the Leaders of Tomorrow Springboard in the city of Trivandrum continues on the other side. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our continued coverage of the Leaders of Tomorrow Springboard in the city of Trivandrum. We're here to bring you all of the highlights on ground. Have a look. Mr. Vijayaraghavan, when it comes to skill development, in certain industries it's fairly obvious. Like, for example, we'd mentioned aerospace. But what about more traditional industries that Trivandrum is known for, whether it's cashews or coconuts or industrial rubber, pepper, tea plantations? What happens to that working labor class there, and to what extent is their upskilling a priority, sir?
I'll give you an example of the handloom sector.
Please.
Okay, not very far from where we are is a place called Vijayaraghavan. And you'll be surprised that the income levels of individuals working in that sector, no, I'm not saying everyone, has gone up substantially. Because all that's been done, a few young entrepreneurs have gone in, spoken to people there, and told them, can we look at what they call organic handloom? Which means no chemicals for dyeing, okay? Look at the whole process, making it green in a way, and they get special designs done. And using those designs, they actually market these products internationally. So there are not too many families, a few of them, and the others are slowly catching up. So you will find that there are entrepreneurs who actually start working with local artisans and people like that to get that done. The other one, again, I'm talking of Kerala overall, is the Kochi Biennale. Okay, nobody would ever think that art would give this kind of an exposure. Actually, I would say one of the biggest attractions for Kerala on an alternate year is the Biennale, because the number of people who come there, the impact that it has on the Cochin economy is very high. So you will find that once the government moves into the role of a facilitator, okay, you will automatically see that change happen. So that's one. Cashew sector, you must remember that Kerala has to start choosing what industries it wants.
Absolutely.
Okay? It can't look at anything which requires. You can't have an automobile factory come up here. Okay, you need to look at selecting industries which provide the largest number of employment for the lowest amount of space that is possible. We need to start choosing what we want and actually creating a green list and a red list, saying that we don't want certain kinds of industries. Polluting industries will not work in Kerala. The other one is we should really be focusing on where you need skilled people. Unskilled people will not work here because the salary levels are high, the standard of living is high. The reason why many of the states in Kerala have people coming here regularly for looking for jobs is what they earn here is maybe 3 to 4 times what they would earn in their home. So for a lot of India, Kerala is like at one point of time the Middle East or the Gulf countries were for Keralites. So that's a big difference that you see.
Look at the city of Trivandrum's manufacturing clusters, whether it be sawmills or oil mills or cotton textiles or chemicals for that matter, you're seeing an increased degree of automation, obviously, right? Even in the most traditional of industries like industrial rubber, the sectors are absorbing those trends and quickly. What do you think as a result will emerge as sort of the skill sets of the future, and which jobs do you think are most likely to disappear?
We need to do a couple of things. One is there are a lot of existing industries. As mentioned by Vijayaraghavan sir, it is the future of Kerala. Small scale MSMEs, which are small in number, but they will give a lot of employment. One MSME will give employment to maybe on an average 5 to 20, depending on the scale. So existing, you mentioned about sawmills. So existing industries, the focus should be on bringing technology.
Okay.
Second issue with existing industry is the working capital. It's a real shortage of working capital in most of the industries. We are dealing day to day with many working industries. So it could be either a bank loan, like KSIDC, you asked about what is KSIDC's role. We are providing up to 5 crore at 5%. So as an NBFC, working capital is a real requirement. Third could be, the second generation issue. The industry is doing well, there is a market, there is an existing market, but the new generation youngsters are not ready to take over. So they are looking for partners, they are looking for, selling it, or they are looking for investment. So that is a present situation in existing industries. So that is one part. So we should have a multi-pronged approach to sustain and to scale up the existing industries. Second is about new investments, where the skill question comes. So as mentioned by both panelists, Kerala, we should focus on our strengths. Service sector is very strong. Primary and secondary agriculture or industry is okay, but our strength is service sector. And our strength is also skill jobs. So we should really focus on skilling people, because the retaining of talent is really high in Kerala because of so many other factors.
And, I want to close the panel by posing a question to all three of my panelists. And the three organizations you work at are deeply admired. And for the members of this audience that are looking to essentially take their own personal and professional goals to the next level by leveraging what you have to offer by way of service, by way of opportunity, how do they do so? Whose doors do they knock on? How do they take the first step? I'll start with you, Mr. Vijayaraghavan.
Kerala is good for clean tech.
Yes.
Clean technology. It's the hygiene levels we follow. So we need to find dignified jobs for which we need to have high quality higher education. I understand the government is working on certain policies on allowing private universities and things like that. If some of those happen, you will find people staying back. When they stay back, people will come here because they have qualified people here. You will find good jobs coming here. Otherwise, we can have a problem.
Wonderful. And Mr. Prasad, please, I think that was very heartfelt and an incredible observation. And if I could give you the last word, Mr. Prasad.
I think the opportunity exists. The underlying substrate is there, great people, a great work ethic and so on and so forth. So the opportunity exists to bring the talent back and so on. And in fact, the reason a lot of technology companies are expanding in Trivandrum and rest of Kerala is there is a willingness for experienced middle managers to come back here. The logistics cost is higher, which makes us less competitive in the global market. Now the state has a unique opportunity where for a first time in a long time, ever since Technopark was founded as the first IT park or more than 30 years ago, for the first time in a long time, we have a unique positioning as the hinterland of the most efficient container port in the country. which immediately reduces your cycle times, reduces your logistics cost. So and I was joking with, I won't name who it is, but a member of the leadership of the government of Kerala, and he jokingly said that the port comes up in Trivandrum, but the factories will come up in Kanyakumari. So that needs to stop, and it's good to distribute benefits to everybody in the region, but Kerala is spending $1 zillion on the port. There has to be development in the state as well, and that needs to, there are some visionary things like the outer ring road and so on that are going on. But I think entrepreneurs and folks who want to work in Kerala also need to step up and find those industries, whether it's logistics, whether it's sub-distribution, whether it's manufacturing, light manufacturing, which can really benefit and have a strategic advantage from having this port here.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that makes for a wonderful note upon which to close the panel. I really have to thank all three gentlemen for digging deep into their personal and professional journeys. Well, Mr. Prasad, Mr. Harikishore, Mr. Vijayaraghavan, thank you so much for adding such depth and breadth to the conversation. I really have to applaud you for such a rich range of insights. Ladies and gentlemen, huge round of applause, please. Well, that brings our Leaders of Tomorrow Springboard to a wrap. I'm Pooja Jain signing off from the city of Trivandrum. We'll see you next time.